All right, guys, welcome back to the Raised Hunting Podcast. And today I'm joined with Warren and Easton, but we have a special guest today. And I can call him special guest because he's visiting from, you're actually from Iowa, though.
Yep.
Or now you are, right?
Yes, sir.
We'll get into all that here in a little bit. And it's not sir, it's David. Don't
David.
I mean, you make me feel old. But Brook Martin is here with us, deer killing fool, public hunting killing fool. So anyhow, maybe by the end of the podcast, he'll just be a fool for coming on here with us. But nonetheless, we'll have fun, So, Brook, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Let us get through a couple little things here, and then we'll start talking deer hunting. But
I like having a guest because then he can't call us the special guests.
Yeah,
that's a good idea. He's constant. We're do this 78 episodes now, right?
Yeah.
We're not that special anymore.
Yeah. To him, you are.
that's right.
I wish he thought that.
Are you pulling up YouTube, people?
Yeah, I'm doing YouTube.
Okay. Apple, we got shout out. A couple of you guys left reviews. If you don't want to get shout out, then don't say anything. So that's fine though. We'll happily accept your 5-star review. CBAB C002. Appreciate you. He says the real deal. Got to meet these fellas in person at ATA show. Always enjoy the dialogue they have on the podcast. Thanks, man. We appreciate you. Thank you, Apple folks, for leaving reviews. They've done that since yesterday. So we still got to see if we can catch up to Spotify. If we can get to 200 on there. On Apple. Spotify, they're on their way to 300. So you guys just keep rocking. And now we're probably running out of people to go from – we have people that go over from Spotify for us, go just to Apple to leave us a review there just so that we got them on both. So those guys,
that's funny.
They rock. And then the Raised Hunting Podcast channel on YouTube has been rocking. So are you going to shout out a couple of those people?
Yeah, we got quite a few comments. Most of them are saying thank you for the shout out from last week. But now I know why you do this. It's hard to read their names. Callan's Creations 574, being the real G. Definitely a great training tool, fun, realistic, great motivation. He's talking about the 3D topic that we just did last week. Maine Salmon Trout Company. Another one, B&B Custom Game Calls. We're always shouting him out. He's the man. Travis Shuttleworth. He asked, can we put this is for you, Nick, can we put a new label on the new podcast? But I will preface it with, if you pay attention to he's obviously on the Raised Hunting Podcast channel, so you're in the right spot. If you start seeing the new cover photos or thumbnails will look like they're different. You'll notice that with the 3D course or the 3D topic. That was the first one. Looks totally different from all the other ones. That's new ones. And we're only doing one every week, so if you look at the dates. Otherwise, if we start putting new in there, we run out of title space for the rest of them. So anything we're posting right now, though, where they're all updated, they're all up or up to date and everything. So here on out, anything that's being posted on there is new. So that'll do it.
Is that it for all of our, whatever you call it?
Shout out.
Cleaning out the closet stuff here.
House cleaning
or whatever.
We're not M&M.
Huh?
Cleaning out the closet.
I don't know. All right. Well, good deal. Well, I'm excited. I want to start talking about deer hunting.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, Brook, thank you for joining us. We sure appreciate it. And we got to visit just for a couple minutes before we sat down here. So I think I gathered that you're not from Iowa, though.
Correct.
You moved here. How long ago did you move here?
Just over 5.5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Now, did you move here for the deer hunting, or did you move here for work, or a combination of the two?
Deer hunting. So I'll give you a little background. I went to college, be a sales manager is what I wanted to be in the hunting industry. So landed my dream job after college and was in my first year doing that. I was working for Wasp Broadheads and Montana Decoy and traveling a lot. But I enjoyed it, but I also kind of realized that there's more to life. I wanted more,
Right.
And apparently I complained to my girlfriend all the time about, man, I just want to move out west. And part of that was I had a job offer in the middle of college I turned down to be a sales guy, and he wanted me to just drop college out and go for it. And I kind of regretted I didn't do it at the time, and so that was always in the back of my mind that I could be in the Midwest if I would have did that. So I complained enough, and she one day was just like, just do it. She's like, I'm not going anywhere. Just do it, And it was a month later, I'm interviewing in Iowa, first time ever in Iowa, interviewed for a job, took it, and a half a month later I was out here. So
So was that with wasp broadheads then?
No, so it was with a company called Aerotech. It was totally out of the hunting industry. I was an engineering recruiter. Nothing I wanted to do, but it got me to Iowa, so I didn't care. So
there you go.
Like,
anything for the deer, right?
Yeah.
Did you miss working at Wasp?
Yeah, so they kept me on for a while, and I did a lot of their social media for like the next year or two, which was good. But after being in the hunting industry, it wasn't what I thought it was. So like, I didn't really miss getting out of it. You know, they're great people. Don't get me.
Oh, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
We're on your side, man.
Yeah,
it's a fully loaded envelope, my man.
Yeah, the first time I went to ATA, I was like, man, this is not what I expected it was going to be. You know, so I kind of had a whole change perspective, which was good because it got me an opportunity to see the industry from my perspective and not just what you see on TV or social media.
It's a very small industry.
Yeah, it is.
And so then the opportunity to make good money is tough.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and so where you can take the same skills and apply it in another venue and be doing 10 times better.
Yeah. And then like on the sales side, like it was kind of cutthroat. Like people were kind of doing whatever they could. They were chasing dollar figure, right? So from that perspective, like all the time people would come and be like, hey, and offer jobs at like ATA and stuff. It's kind of weird. Like that's not the place you would think, but like other companies would reach out to you and it was like, I don't know, this isn't probably for me, you know.
They were doing that at the show?
Yeah, like other companies, and like you go to do like big events and like I won't mention who, but there's a bow manufacturer and he still calls me from this day wanting me to get back into it. And it's like, that's just not what I want to do right now. So, but it was fun.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that the hunting industry means lots of hunting.
Yeah.
And they don't see the business side that goes on, but which is 90% of the hunting industry.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a lot. Then when some people get to see the other side of it, they're like, oh wow, yeah, this isn't quite what I anticipated it was going to be.
No.
So
the bigger question is Iowa what you thought it would be?
Yeah, and more. I joke, but it's not really a joke. My only regret in life is I didn't move sooner. You know, it's been such a blessing, so I love it. Yeah.
So was the wife good with it?
Yeah, so
you didn't have to talk her into it at all?
No, so we kind of strategized. Like, we were just dating at the time, and so I moved out here, and the move situation was chaos. Like, all I was focused on was, like, getting to Iowa. So I got approved to a bunch of different apartments, and my parents came with me to move, and I didn't, like, sign a lease on any of them. So, like, I showed up in Cedar Rapids and was, like, looking around all these apartments, and they were, like, dumps. And I was like, I don't know about this, you know? Like, what did I just move to? Because I'm not a city boy, and Cedar Rapids is obviously a big city. So it was funny. We, like, half moved into one apartment that I did sign a lease on, and it was a duplex, and the people below it were out there smoking, and we're, like, moving in. And I was asking the guy, I was like, is this a pretty safe neighborhood? And he's like, oh, man. And I'm like, what? You know, and looking around, and he's like, there was a shooting across the street last week. He's like, but other than that, it's been pretty quiet. And I'm like, and, like, I'll never forget, like, I just stopped, and, like, my mom heard it, and she's like, you're not living here. And I'm like, we'll see. And then my dad's like, Brooke, no. Like, so he slept in the truck that night because we were half unloaded.
Right.
And there was people, like, walking around the truck because it was kind of parked with a U-Haul and, like, walking around the sidewalk. And all night he kept getting woken up, people walking around it. But we packed everything back up the next day, and I moved to Marion, which was, like, 20 minutes north, and it's a little nicer area. So in a 500-square-foot apartment. But it got me to Iowa. I didn't care.
Right.
That was, like, the least of my worries. And they were like, this is, like, a big thing you should be focused on. I was like, I don't care. I'm in Iowa, you know. So that's – whatever. It worked out. It's a good story now. But
so when did you move then? Like, what time of year was it?
It would have been right in June. I'm trying to think. It would have been like the first, second week in June.
Okay, so then you were able to were you able to get a tag?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So I was able to get a tag to hunt that fall. I think it was. I can't remember if it's 90 or 120 days.
I think it's 90 days.
I think it's 90.
And you have to, like, have a bunch of things in line to prove that you're a resident.
Yep.
And I did it just before season. I think in September is when I actually got my license and be able to do it. So, yeah. So
in 5 years then that you've been here now, how many deer have you killed since you've been in Iowa?
Oh, that's a lot. I'll have to say I killed 10 this year in Iowa, but only $3, and the rest were does. But I'm trying to think.
We'll just go bucks.
So $3 this year. Thinking last year, I killed $2 last year. So that'd been 5. Year before, I need to look at my wall is what I need to do to see what's up there.
I love it when
That's
someone
good when
can't
you gotta
remember.
count.
Yeah, when you can't remember how many.
Yeah.
Well, here, maybe this will make it easier. So are you strictly hunting public, or are you also hunting private?
I'm hunting some private too. I don't lease anything. I don't pay anything for what I hunt. It's just knocking on doors and talking to people.
So that's a
so
thing you
of
can
the-
do still? You can knock on doors and get
yeah, you got to have some tactics to it,
Oh.
and it's getting kind of flooded. Don't get me wrong, but like I don't have
He's a
single.
sales guy, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to talk to people, but for me, the thing that people don't realize is like none of those places are solely just mine to hunt. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like I share them, and like all of them have a shotgun group that pushes the heck out of it, and usually that's where all the 3-year-olds go every year. They're dead then, after that, but. I share a lot of that. I do hunt mostly on public. In fact, what I've been doing is like a lot of the bigger private pieces I've gotten. I'm not able to alter or do anything with them, but I save them and like don't mess with them. And then like when family and friends draw a tag to Iowa, they have a pretty good hunt because I leave it for them. Now,
Right.
granted, they might end up running into another person that bow hunts it or whatever,
Right.
but that's what I kind of do is save it for them more than anything. But
So
I
how
was just
many of
giving you
those
crap.
deer have come from public and versus private?
I know majority have. I'm trying to think.
We'll think of the private ones then. That should make it easier.
Yeah, of the private ones, there's 1, 2, 4 have been private. The rest have been public, and I'm trying to think. Yeah, I need to sit down, and I should have had a little pre-plan.
No
You want me to
worries.
pull up your Facebook profile for you?
You could.
I
Look at
will.
it.
Do you do the urban hunts?
I do. So I do.
So that's how you did 3.
3. Yep. So I did an urban hunt this year. I've had an urban buck tag the last 2 years.
So do me a favor for the folks that are listening. Explain what an urban hunt is and how you are able to kill another deer.
Sure.
Because I just think there's probably some people in Iowa. Most of the people in Iowa will know, but a lot of people outside of Iowa won't understand how it works.
Yeah, it's kind of been a hidden secret, which is great.
Yeah.
But so essentially, a bunch of different cities in Iowa have a deer problem, right? Just like anywhere else in the country here. So they allow you to shoot so many does, and then if you shoot like some's 3, some's 5, I think that's pretty much most of the quantities I've seen. But if you shoot so many does the year prior, then it grants you a buck tag for the following year. So, like the city I hunt, you have to shoot 3 does the year prior, and then you get a buck tag for the following year. Is what it gets you, which is really nice. But
Are
Yeah.
those guaranteed?
yeah, as long as you get your
I think
does.
Des Moines is
Des Moines is a draw
Yeah, I
unless
think
unless
you-
you're the
unless
unless you
kill
shot the
most,
most
whatever.
does. And I can tell you that's a high number of does.
What were you saying? The one
The
is
dude,
like
the-
30 some
yeah,
does.
the guy that I went and tracked for, he does it year after year, and multiple times he's killed like 28 and 31 before the year before in order to guarantee his tag for the next year. But as long as you kill 5 does at least in like Polk County,
You're in the draw.
You're in the draw for it.
Thank God he's not in our doe
But,
competition.
Yeah, no kidding. I told him that. I was like, thank God you don't do our doe competition. He goes, let me know when. I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. You stay out.
Yeah, I get tired of gutting them after 5.
Yeah, no kidding.
I can't imagine freaking shooting.
It
30
used to,
does.
from what I do understand though, it used to be like if you killed 5, you got a buck tag. But I think it's become pretty common or popular in Des Moines, and so they've started switching it to where you have to draw.
Right. Yeah.
Just at a quick glance, I think I've killed 9 bucks in Iowa. 5 been on public, 4 been on private.
Okay.
So,
It's a good ratio.
yeah, this year was kind of a weird year with the HD. So like all my main targets on public that I was going after got wiped out early, and then so like I had to reset my whole game plan on what I was going to do. So that's really the urban buck was obviously private, and then I shot my recurve buck also earlier in the year.
Using a recurve sometimes,
Yeah, I just dabbled in it some, but
Warren.
It was pretty good for
There
dabbling.
you go.
yeah,
I dabbled in it too, and every turkey I shot ran around with like an Indian with an arrow in it. I mean, it was freaking terrible.
In his
Yeah.
defense, that's how they look when he uses a compound too for turkeys, but
yeah.
just normally doesn't hit them. But that is my question and my challenge to you,
Okay.
because I have a hard time believing, but the more I talk to you, you seem like a legit dude, so I have to believe you.
All right.
Public, you don't talk to very many guys that can say that they target deer on public. You talk to guys that they go hunt public, yeah, they might kill some big deer.
Yeah.
From what it seems like, from what he's shown me and everything at your social, you're consistently doing it. Now, is there a secret? Are you doing something different? You don't have to tell us a secret, but what in the heck are you doing that you have a way to be able to target a deer or know a deer on public? I haven't even talked to very many people that know deer on public.
Yeah, so really it comes down to I run a lot of cameras, so it allows me opportunities to keep access or keep tabs on certain deer. And then I've got like a couple of hard drives that I download all my trail cam photos on, and I'm very organized in how I download them, like to the specific public piece and then a specific scrape or a mock scrape on, say, a southeast corner that I put in or whatever. And then I document it as far as the dates. So then each year prior to season, I go back, or I remember, hey, that deer made it. I want to see what he's doing, and then I go back and look at that. So running a lot of cameras allows me to keep, one, tabs on deer from year to year, and then two, it is tough because to keep tabs on a particular buck on public, he's got to spend a fair amount of time on that public. Yeah. And if he doesn't, then you're kind of wasting your time, right? If his home core range is not there, then you're kind of shooting in the dark or spending a lot of wasted time in the tree. So that's kind of how I do it. And then I also run a lot of cameras all over the state. So, like, when I first moved here, that first summer, I was running cameras all over, like north, south. You know, I was already kind of eastern part of the state, and I went to the middle part of the state and stuff like that, really branched out. And that one showed me a lot of different public that I think is good to keep tabs on. And then also, too, it gave me an opportunity to, like, all right, I know that public well enough. If there is a big deer there next year, I kind of have an idea what to do. So then I'll dump a bunch of cameras in there and then check them. Some of them I'll set cameras into a piece of public that, like, I don't know that there's a shooter in there this year, but I want to see in case there's a big 3-year-old or 4-year-old that I want to keep tabs of for the following years. And then at the end of the season, if that camera's, one, not stolen or the card's still in or whatever, I'll go back through and look at it. I'm like, okay, that deer's pretty good. I need to probably pay attention to that deer next year or so forth. So a lot of that.
Spread yourself out a lot.
Yeah, I drive a lot. Yeah, I put too many miles on a vehicle. It's not even funny, but yeah, it's just part of it. But
are you running cell cams or just regular cameras?
Yeah, so I run both. Typically, my cell cameras I only put on if there's a deer in an area that I want to target. Very rarely do I put them in just a random piece of public that I'm not familiar with, unless I see a lot of good sign. It's like, there's a pretty big deer in here working. I want to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
But most of the time, if I'm dumping my cell cameras in somewhere, it's because there's a deer in there that I'm trying to target, and I want to see what he's doing. What helps a lot of times is when you do run cameras, say 2 or 3 years prior, and you have history of that deer on that public piece, you already kind of know what he's going to do. You just got to fine-tune it when you go in there and decide to kill him, you know, at that point. I think a lot of guys don't keep track of that information or that data, and then they lose track of it, and the deer's 5 and 6, and he's huge, and now all of a sudden it piqued their interest. It's like, you should have been paying attention to what he was doing the last 2 years, and guess what? You probably already, he's dead, just doesn't know it yet, you know. So that's kind of my perspective. But I've been able to watch several bucks. The longest one would be 4 years on public, which is a long time on public.
It's a long time anywhere.
Yeah,
for sure.
But that particular deer did not live a lot of time on public. Like, it was just like on the edge of his core zone, and I noticed the older he got, the less he spent there. You know, I'm assuming it shrunk, and it's more on the private that was next to it. But he was a particularly big deer, and actually it was kind of chaotic because, and I won't go into a ton of details, but there was like I'd call him a celebrity hunter, but a pretty well-known hunter that on social media that was hunting that deer also. And he did some shady stuff, like stealing some of my cameras and stuff, but the deer was big. Like, he was a 200-inch deer, and, like, it's the only one I've had to chase. So people do stupid stuff when a deer's that big. So
that's still no excuse.
I know, yeah. I know. I always joke that I wanted to run into him into the timber, but probably wouldn't have been good. But I reported him.
Were you able to confirm that it was him?
Yeah, so, like, yeah. So
I think you should air him out.
I would like to. The DNR didn't want to do anything about it. It was the problem. Like, I presented all the evidence. So he stole one of my cameras, and he left his tether that he uses around the tree for his tree saddle. And he had specific clips that, like, didn't come with that saddle company. In all of his hunting videos, you could see those specific clips. Well, my camera that got stolen was right there. Camera's gone, but when he was putting the camera, I guess, in the bag, that fell out, and it was still left there, and he left it there. And I had another camera about 80, 90 yards further down. I got a picture of him the same day. So
he's a thief and a ding-dong.
Pretty good chance.
Yeah, and I talked to the DNR and presented them all the stuff, and they're like, that's as good of evidence as you're ever going to get. And I was like, okay, so what are we going to do? And then it was like nothing, so I didn't hear nothing, and I get their spread thin. So I called the guy later, and his relative is in law enforcement, so I'm not sure if that kept it out, like this hunter's relative. So I don't know what the reason is, but they're like, we're not going to pursue it. It was, $100 camera. And I'm like, okay, just out of principle, it's like, whatever.
Yeah.
But
That'd piss me off. I'd take it into my own hands.
believe me, I wanted to run it. I'm not a bad dude, but I'm confrontational. If someone screws you over, I'm going to say something, right?
Especially if it's just not worth it, though. Especially if you go and you got lucky and you killed that deer.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be a whole battle and
Sure.
Everything else. But so I have I have a lot of questions for you, actually. Well, one, do you score any of your deer?
I do not.
Okay, so do you have an idea on any of them? Is your biggest deer off of public or off permission?
I would say public.
Off public?
Yeah.
Okay, from what we know. So just so that the audience knows, too, like, Brook's killing some big deer. And when I say his biggest deer, I know that the one has got to be probably, like, that one with all the points has got to be in the mid-70s, maybe even low 80s, if I just had to take a guess. And I'm usually fairly close, except for Shane's deer. Sorry, Shane.
And my deer.
Yours?
You told me there was a monster in there that morning.
There could have been. We don't know that it's the same deer.
Warren has had an off year, but I will give him this. He is normally within a couple inches on a photo. We'll just disregard this year because I've whipped his butt left and right on guessing them.
But anyway, so I'm going to ask you some questions, and if you're not comfortable on answering them, just say secret. Okay, like that's going to be our safe.
That's
word.
our safe word.
That's fine. I'll use it. Whatever.
Because I'll just be, we'll be completely transparent. If you look at what you're doing, and it's not arrogant at all. You're doing something different than what everybody else is doing in order to be able to kill the deer of the caliber that you are on public.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you know, and you're just trying to be humble, which I don't blame you. But I'm saying you're not being arrogant anyway. So
this is very good communication to set up this discussion. Good job, Warren.
Why?
With setting up safe words and everything. This is intelligent.
It's 2024. You got to do that.
I'm so sorry I didn't ask you your pronouns earlier.
Yeah.
Trying to make sure this whole thing, is all good with Biden and everybody else.
Yeah.
So my first question for you would be like so I shed hunt public a lot, and I've found stuff before that, and I've actually hunted some public too, but I've never spent just a ton of time there just because I got tired of dealing with people,
Yeah.
But like I always love shed hunting it because like Iowa has, I know we don't have a ton of public, but my God, some of the ground looks incredible, So my first question to you would be is like when you go to a piece of public, I think about it, and then I think of this in Western terms too. So I think of it in two different ways. When I say Western, I'm talking out west, Montana, Wyoming, blah, blah, blah. Do you change? So I think about it two ways. Either one, I'm just looking at what looks like good deer stuff that I would approach anywhere else that I had exclusive access to or whatever and going right there. Then I'm afraid that everybody else is thinking the exact same thing, and so then I'm going to go to the fringes or stuff that doesn't look as good. Do you have a strategy on that, that right off the gate, okay, it's never worth going to the best-looking stuff, or you need to go there?
Yeah, it just kind of depends. So, like, say I'm taking a new piece of public, which I'm going to have to do a lot of this year just for the simple fact of EHD wiped out a ton of deer and all on different pieces of public that I was hunting, a ton of the older age class. But say I'm looking at a new piece of public, I'll do kind of like a shotgun approach of scouting it like this time of year, and I'll try to cover the whole thing, but I do have key areas that I'm already looking at on the map that I want to focus on, right? I'm not going to focus on, like, any inside field corners or anything that's, like, evident that there's going to be a tree stand or a cell camera already there. Like, I'm not wasting my time on that. I'm digging more into the timber and looking at the fringes, the edges inside the timber that people might not recognize as much and bucks are using and kind of see what signs there. And then if you find a big shed, then that's a bonus that, hey, there's a deer living in here. This time of the year, that's big, So, yeah, I take a different approach to it. I don't.
So you're definitely taking people into consideration before you're ever even going on that property.
Absolutely. But I don't, like a lot of people, when the public hunting craze came out, everyone's like, go deep, go deep. I'm not necessarily saying that's the best case scenario to do that. Like one of the biggest, if not the biggest public land buck I killed, I could see the road where I was at. But that's where that deer liked to live, right? He had plenty of cover. You couldn't see him from the road, but I could see the road and the tree I was in, So
how big of a difference did you see on the public land thing? Like when like hunting public guys and everything, and that started to get, like, did it go like a drastic change?
Yeah. So
okay, I saw the same thing.
Yeah, and nothing against.
Just want to make sure it wasn't me.
Yeah. No, and like it's kind of disappointing because like the first year I moved to Iowa, I got humbled. I ate my tags. I didn't kill it, and probably because I had an unrealistic expectation of what Iowa was. Right. I ate my tags. I was looking at deer that were 150. I was like, I'm not shooting that. And it's like a PA bullet. It's never killed anything, but a 130 was my best deer. And I'm like, I ain't shooting that. It's like, what is wrong with me? Looking back, you know.
It worked out, evidently.
Yeah, but it was stupid.
I'm going to start passing 150s.
No, it was stupid. But I had that in my mindset. And I was like, I don't know where these booners are. I can't find, you know. But after that, once I realized that, hey, I got to put in a ton more work than I expected in my first year, and I started really deep diving into public, I was finding like a couple pieces of public would have a couple booners in it, right? And that was 4 years ago. And now, like, and it could be a combination. We've had a couple rough years, but I'm not seeing that. Like one big chunk of public, I might find one big deer in there that I'll chase, right? There's very rarely a time where there's 2 deer in there that I'm going to shoot. So, like, it's very specific to that deer. It's not those deer anymore. And I've just noticed that just in the last couple of years. I think part of it is one, there's a ton of podcasts and hunting videos. Like, the public's a cool thing to do now, and which is great. I'm glad to see people utilizing the resources, but because of that, I don't think any deer are hidden anymore, right?
Yeah.
I don't think all your main pinches and stuff, like there's a tree stand there, like someone else is going to sit it no matter what in this season. And you see all these out-of-state guys, and that's what I notice is kind of what I'm avoiding or trying to avoid a lot of times is like they show up the last week in October, and then for like the next 2.5, 3 weeks, they're hitting hard, and they're just going like just running everywhere. Like they were just trying, and I get it, they were a limited amount of time, so they're just trying to do whatever. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. I try to avoid people is what I try to do, and I shouldn't admit this, but if I run into someone on public, I play really dumb. Like I'm a new hunter, like, and I don't say any. Like a lot of times they're like, "Oh, you see any big deer?" No, like I don't lie, but I'll lie about big deer. Like I'm not gonna talk, especially if we're hunting the same piece.
Well, it's
Yeah, dude, there's a
when-
180 down here.
Yeah.
You as soon as you say that, one, everybody and their brother is going to know, and then two,
Yeah.
he's going to be sitting there every day.
Yeah, so like a lot of times I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to shoot a doe. I'm really just getting into it, and it's like I shouldn't be like that, but I am because I kind of like don't want that added attention.
How many
and
times
stuff.
have you been burned on it?
A lot.
Exactly.
And I had one guy pull in the parking lot in the dark one morning, pulled in, and this is like the second year I was here, and I was like, I'm a nobody anyhow, but like I wasn't very well. People didn't know that I killed a big deer, which I wasn't yet, right? But he knew that I had killed a couple of big deer the year before, and he's like, "Is that Brook Martin? Are you Brook Martin?" And I'm like, I don't like this, you know? And it burned me. Yeah, and I'm like, what am I going to do? And I'm like, yeah, it's me. And he's like, must be a big deer back here. And I'm like, and there was, but I was like, oh, man, we got doe tags and bad time of the year, you know, it was a cold front in October. It's like, yeah, and like, yeah, there was a big deer back here. That's what I'm doing. But I shouldn't be like that, but I've been burnt so many times. And like growing up in Pennsylvania and hunting Maryland, like there's a ton more people that hunt the public out there. So like there's a ton more pressure, and like your own buddies will cut you off to shoot a deer that's, you know, a 3 or 4 year old 120-inch deer back there. So like I've kind of learned to like I'm pretty secretive on stuff.
Yep, you have to be on something like that.
And like
I'd be like, yeah, dude, you know, all right, I didn't tell anybody else this, okay?
Yeah.
So you got to keep this a secret, all right? But like there's probably a 160, 170 over there.
Yeah.
You know, and then I'm going the other
See,
way.
you're not nearly as bad as him. He's completely misleading.
Yeah.
Everybody on this that's talked to us out west or something when we
They're
run
like,
into public,
"Oh."
like, dude, that guy's an ass. I thought he was really helping us.
I'm not going to lead them astray, but I'm also not going to divulge any details. And it's funny because, like, they'll openly be like, look, I've been – because they non-residents now are coming out, and they're coming out in August and running cameras and cell cameras and stuff. In fact, the one piece of public this year, I ran a cell camera there on a pond and, like, never have had any issues. And I walked 50 yards from there. There was a blind that someone just threw up in, like, August, I guess, for October. I'm not sure. And then there was a cell camera there, and I walked like 150 yards the other way, and there was a cell camera over a mineral pile, and I was like, man, I've never had anyone back here. So, and I'm sure it's non-residents that, hey, they want to see these Iowa deer, they got a tag. I get it, but yeah.
Well, the cell cam makes it where that's actually tangible. They can
Yeah,
come out here
right.
one time, go home, and they got and they can be getting pictures still.
Yeah.
So do you find many deer where they keep their home range completely on the public, or 80% of it, or most of them on the edges of public and private? Does the added pressure run them out of there, or they just get smarter?
So it's so situational to how that public's laid out, and then also the individual deer. I think a lot of people look at deer as they're the same, and I really think that each of them have their own kind of clicks or personalities that they do. So to say a broad statement that 80% of it lives on public, no, it just depends on the deer really and where his core range is. One thing I've found, though, is I don't think you can blow a mature buck that's living on public or bedding on public out of there. And the reason why I'd say is you got to think of all the rabbit hunters, the pheasant hunters, squirrel hunters, that people, they're bumping them deer all the time. And, like, I used to have an approach that, man, like, I got to really be careful. But sometimes, like, if I can't find the details I need to kill that deer, I'm going to go in there and purposely use the wind to my favor to kind of work around and bump him where I think he's bedded to kind of give me those details that, yeah, I confirmed he's living in there. You know what I mean? So
because he's going to be back.
Yeah, he's going to go right back. And, you know, I
that's funny because we've had that discussion ourselves, not necessarily on public, on just anywhere.
Yeah.
And we have so many people that are like, if you bump them once, that's it. That deer is gone. And I'm like, how many times do you talk to pheasant guys that are like, every time we go down this one drainage, we jump this big buck, you know, and this is like over several years, you know, and I mean, they know how to get out of there. And I'm not saying that they only have one place to bed, but they're probably going to come back there at some point.
Yeah, and I think that whole myth of that is public has proven to me that that's not the case. Now, I would say if there's continued pressure, like every day, he's either going to get used to it or he's going to be like, I'm done. You know what I mean? It's no different like people walking their dogs in the woods and the deer just look at them and stuff like that. So, again, situational, I think, to the deer, but I also I think it's pretty tough to blow one out of there. I really do. I've seen it. You know what I mean? How many people, when I was hunting that big deer, I mean, not only did that other guy that took my camera, there were several other guys hunting that deer too, and they knew about him. So they were in there every chance they could get, which made it tough because guess what? He's probably getting hunted on the wrong winds and probably smelling them coming in, stuff like that. So that's probably why that deer was so tough to hunt, particularly because it wasn't a big piece of public and there was a ton of pressure there. But
did somebody kill him?
Not to my knowledge. So that year, I thought he would have been 5 that year, and he was probably right at 200 or like 205. He was a mainframe 10 with like 10, 12-inch brow tines, huge, like just huge. I'll show you pictures after the podcast. I won't show it on the podcast.
Smart.
This dude right here, anything with eye guards. Yeah, he could have like 12-inch eye guards and an 8-inch beam, and Dad's like, that's a good deer. We're gonna let that one live. And then he could have an inch eye guard and like 28-inch beams, and he's like, we gotta get rid of that deer.
That's all take him out. No. But, you know, that deer got hunted quite a bit. And then, so the next year, I believe he was probably 6. He went down. He regressed a little bit. And I would put him at like 180s, mid-180s what he was. And I should have actually killed him that year. But he wasn't around enough. He kind of, his home range shrunk. And the reason why I say I should have, let me back up. The year before, I had one really good encounter with him at 70 yards. I thought I was going to kill him. And I had one of them bully 8-pointers that no one wants to shoot come in and actually ran him off. But that's a whole nother story. But that following year when he was like 180, probably 6.5, I was actually hunting a different buck, late muzzleloader, had a cell camera in there where he was at, and I shot a buck, a good deer, probably right at 170, I would guess.
A good deer. That's freaking big.
He was a good buck. But anyhow, that deer, I shot him that night, and don't get me wrong, nothing wrong with shooting that deer. That's the deer I targeted that night. But I got that cell cam picture, and he was there like 15 minutes after legal shooting light. And I was like, man. And he was walking in there on a south wind, which was like deadly for him, like where I suspected it. Like, so he did it the next 2 nights that we had a south wind. And I was like begging my wife. She had a tag, and I was like, hey, will you please like go in here? And she's like, and it was like the last
go shoot this 180.
Yeah, and she's like, and I called this deer Mega, and she's like, I don't want to shoot him. He means too much. You know, I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'd rather you, like, of anyone else in the world shooting him, I'd rather you than anyone. Like, that's how I was trying
Your
to, like.
Your wife is so much different than mine.
She would have been pissed that you didn't.
I'm on my way.
Yeah.
She's like, I'll shoot him right now.
Yeah, we went in there, and it was a south wind, and, like, it was not fun to get in there, like the ravines and stuff. And, like, of course, I was being real strategic to getting there because it's late season, the timber's open, and there was snow on the ground. And she did not have fun getting in there. And it was the last day, and we hunted on the last day, and he didn't come through. It didn't work out. But yeah, she
was probably
like,
pissed.
Yeah, she was like, I dragged her away, and it was like briars, and like we had to like slide down ravines and then walk the ravines and cut up the ravines, and like you were crawling. So like it was not fun, but that's the way to get in there without alerting everything. So just what we had to do. But
what's your theory on deer only going certain places on particular winds? Do you see a lot of consistency with that, or not as much as people put weight into?
Yes and no. I mean, I do think a mature buck gets out of his bed. He beds for a reason in most places, right? And I think even with a doe, when he's locked down, he's bedding there for a certain reason. Typically, it's to avoid other bucks. It's not necessarily wind intentional. It's more of like, I want to avoid other bucks. You know, you see them in a little patch and stuff like that. But I think most of the time they're going to move with the wind to where they feel safe going in the direction or off to the side of where they're going. And very rarely do I see them where the wind's blowing completely from behind them and they're just blatantly walking into the opposite direction, right? I think that's pretty rare. What I try to do and I tell everyone is if you give him the wind and know kind of the direction he wants to go, as long as you're just off it, he's all the confidence in the world. He's going to come through there like normal, and that's how I kill them. You know what I mean? Because they're just cocky going in there. They got everything they see, and then unfortunately I'm sitting there 20 yards away or whatever in a tree, and they come through because they have everything in their favor at that point.
Thank you for listening to our intermission. We are back and ready to roll.
Do you want to pick up your question?
Yeah, Warren, it got cut off and is being quiet now, so I have a chance to ask. I have two questions, and I'm going to put them both out there so that you can't cut me off again, right? On the topic of wind, you said that you're trying to give them the most confidence you can. So my question about that is, are you ignoring hunting something that is maybe necessarily straight down or like the proper wind as far as it's blowing the opposite way from where they're at and they're going to come from? Or are you trying to say, hey, I have enough information that I know that this buck is probably in this area right here, and I know that he wants to come over here. Normally, like in my head, I'm not going to hunt something that could be blowing anywhere near that way.
Yeah.
But are you using that as a positive instead so that you're banking on the fact that he's going to come from this area to here, and you're on the edge of it, and he still has wind in his favor?
Yeah.
And he's just not going to smell you.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
holy crap. I've been hunting my whole life the wrong way.
I think
David, what did you teach us?
Anything that goes wrong always ends up being my fault.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works, but
You're saying that you're hunting horizontal winds basically.
Yes, like when I'm coyote hunting.
Winds.
Quote unquote would be the perfect wind is not the perfect wind because their deer aren't going to use it in that same way.
That's like the way coyote hunters are telling me to hunt. I'm learning that is like it is whack for me to try to get my head around it because I'm not hunting with the wind in my face. And that sounds to me like you're like, okay, I know he's over here. I'm going to try to give him like a parallel wind, like where he's hopefully not going to come up here and cut across my wind, but he might come right next to it.
Yeah. So
and those are what I've always considered as marginal winds or like a questionable wind.
Well, I'm trying to think of deer that I've killed that the wind has been totally at their butt. One I can think of was Magnum. However, I think and Bullwinkle were both the same thing. However, I think that the two things that may have played into effect there is that they were both, the one was super early in the morning and thermals. The wind hadn't picked up to where it was actually lined out yet.
Yeah.
And then the same thing in the afternoon with Bullwinkle. The wind had stopped, and then it wasn't. So it wasn't technically the wind it was supposed to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if they were playing that wind, once those thermals took into effect, they lost that advantage.
I can think of 4 right now for me.
What?
That I'm thinking of that now. This year,
yeah,
that wind was blowing into the trees, and we both were like, I think we're up far enough where it's not going to blow to where we think they're bedded. And he came from right along our wind and shot him at 20 yards. Last year,
who?
My deer this year. Remember that wind
was our wind?
It was blowing. It would be northeast. It was like northeast almost, and so it was blowing into the timber that he was coming from, but he was further down,
yes,
where we thought that they were all bedded.
Yeah,
it came that way
across it. Yeah,
and then last year's too with Dad.
Well, BG,
that was blowing into their main bedding, and me and Dad said this is going right down a ditch, so we think we'll be good. They all came out of there.
BG was
pretty
much the same.
I don't know why we just met.
Now, a minute ago is my fault. I didn't hear that. That was my fault that we were
Dad,
sitting there with the right wind.
You're an amazing man, Dad.
Now they're killing all these bucks because of that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the only reason I've killed any of my deer is because of him and him. But
I've got 2 booners that he hung the stand and everything.
It's just wrong. Even said what wind to hunt it with. And
Yeah.
then go sit there and.
BG was a marginal wind then too, or a marginal
Well,
wind.
it was southwest. So and then he came from the west.
Oh,
so, yeah.
I have not
Like
been.
he was cutting across. That wind was cutting across his face, if that makes any sense.
I haven't had any aha moments in a couple years where I'm like, "Oh, this gets me excited to try." Oh, this is bad that we're in January because now I'm gonna be thinking about that for the next
right.
7 months.
My question is, so how are you? What is your what are you using for stands? Are you employing a saddle?
Yes.
And are you hunting out of a saddle?
So I used to just hunt out of just a lone wolf, the Salt 2, like the Molder. They're kind of heavier ones. But then the saddle thing, I was like, everyone else kind of like, it's just a fad, whatever. I'm not going to do it. And then I kind of watched the one buddy. I hunted with him in Kansas, and he was using it. I was like, that's kind of slick. And it's not the weight savings things that I like about it. It's the fact that I can put it up, and I use the big trophy line mission platform.
That goes all around.
Yeah, I'm
or
not
like
partial to
halfway.
any brand. So, like, I'm kind of a gear junkie. I'm going to try it and see if I like it, and I'll give you my opinion on it. But it's huge. It weighs like 5 pounds, so it's as much as a stand. But because of that big platform, I can shoot almost 360 around a tree, and that's what I like. Because if they come in or do something different than what I expect, as long as they're in that bubble of my range, like, I feel like I'm going to get them killed. So,
Gotcha. So you're not leaving anything when you come out. Everything comes out with you.
Yep, and very rarely do I hunt the same tree unless I know for a fact that's the kill tree. Like, he's gonna,
Right.
and if he didn't come through there that night, then guess what? I'm gonna hunt it again because
Right.
that's the tree I need to be in.
So what if he does come there and you don't get a shot?
Well,
And he
then
doesn't bust you.
there's no harm, no foul because he had to win the whole time typically. And as long as he don't see me in the
Yeah.
tree, it's good. Granted, thermals and stuff like that can happen, but I've been pretty fortunate. If they get to that bubble,
They're
I
dead.
usually kill them typically.
I would say the same thing until my year this year.
It happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
He had a bunch of deer inside of a bubble and couldn't kill them
Yeah.
at 4 yards.
I
you
had
know?
a buck at 5 yards. I was actually trying to hunt. That was the first deer that I actually had very close that I was targeting. And he was at 5 yards, and I couldn't shoot him. I was pissed. And
That's
right before that,
frustrating.
I had him at 16 yards, and I was at full draw, and I couldn't shoot him because of a limb.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
Anyways,
Oh,
go
well.
on.
So yeah, no. My question was, I mean, so when you go in, and when you leave, nobody knows you were there.
Yeah, typically, I don't leave anything in a tree. Like, very rarely do, like I said, do I hunt the same spot twice, and very rarely will I hunt that spot evening or morning. Like, it doesn't make sense to unless I really think I'm going to catch him going back to bed there, right, in the next morning. So, yeah, I would love to know, and every year I say I'm going to keep track how many times I hang a set, but I probably don't want to know because I do it a lot. And sometimes I'll hang a set, and I'm like, I'll get up there, and my confidence is like, this ain't it, and I'll get down and move right away. And that's just one thing that I do. But one thing that I do that I think a lot of people either don't do or don't think about is I don't try to go in there like super early. A lot of guys try to go into a spot super early. They want to let things calm down. It's like, why let things calm down? Why don't you just go in there and be very quiet, set your stuff quiet so you're not alerting anything, and then guess what? There's no chance of the wind swirling or the thermals to pick up or do something weird, and you alert that deer if you're in there 4 hours before you need to shoot them. You know? So I'll be honest, I kind of get in there late compared to what most people would think, but I think as long as you're getting in there quiet and don't walk like a deer or walk like a deer and not walking like a human, as long as you can get in clean, I think that's more important than, I'm going to let it calm down. To me,
Right.
that's the wrong approach.
Yeah, I've never.
I think
cared
the
to do
more
that.
time you're sitting there, the better chance you have of messing something
Yeah,
up. you know?
exactly.
Hold on, I got one other question, but this comes from the other day. We were looking up some different studies, and one of the studies was talking about public deer versus private deer and when they're killed. And so they on public land, 75% of year and a half old deer are killed. Now I don't know. I don't know what state that is, but anyhow, their study showed them. And then, if they in the same state on private land, it was only 37%.
Okay.
So they're killing twice as many of your year and a half old deer. So my question to you is, are you passing deer on, meaning like, are you still looking for a certain age or a certain caliber buck? I mean, and are you willing to pass a deer on public ground?
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest with you, if I'm hunting a specific deer, I'm hunting that deer. And I haven't shot a bonus deer. The only bonus deer I didn't know about was a public land hunt I did in Kansas in the last 5 years, right? Every other deer I knew about prior to. And that was my target going in there. Other than I did shoot one buck. There was 2 bucks in there that I was willing to shoot, but I was actually after a different one. And then that one I saw on the hoof, and I was like, he is way bigger than I expected on the hoof. And I was like, all right, I'm going to throw a grunt and a snort wheeze at him, and here he come, and got him, right? But so, yeah, I pass a lot of deer. In fact, I don't post. I used to post a lot of that, but I kind of like, I don't want to say I'm a secretive person, but like I don't share a lot of that because
when you start posting, you're in the same boat as telling the dude that you just ran into in the
and then like woods. Yeah, like so I don't post a lot of that. I'll video them and stuff like that.
You post teasers though.
I do,
which should be banned.
It should be banned. I do.
He'll post his another hammer and he's got the text over it, and I'm like, screw this dude. You know, like now all I want to see is the deer.
That's exactly what you do on raised huntings.
No, they get to see it. You
just show part of the base.
They got to wait 12 hours. Huge. He's not showing them at all.
So,
that is mean. That is not fair.
If you message me and I trust you, I'll send you the picture. So you can message me and I'll send you the picture. But a lot of times it's like I do that a lot to tease people.
That's crap,
and
man.
like my wife, my wife killed her first booner last year. I'm assuming we didn't score it, but it's big, big, and we didn't post it at all. And like I teased the heck out of that one, and we still haven't shared it. And she's like, I don't want any attention, so don't post it. So it's not gonna get posted.
That probably makes it worse. Because then everybody wants to know.
Yeah, if you come to my house, you can see it. It's hanging there. But
right.
Yeah, it's.
So going back to his question real quick, you'd mentioned earlier that you'd be putting cameras at places and getting pictures of 3- and 4-year-old deer to be able to watch for next year. I have 2 questions to that. One, do you have any idea on like the survival rate that you're seeing on those? Do you know? Okay, well next year I got probably half of those to be able to possibly chase. And then on top of that, do you see that previous year data is really, does it help you that much, or does it change a lot because could be more people there? Now there's somebody else from another state that's hunting there, or things of that nature affecting what they were doing.
Yeah. So let's first talk about the survival rate. I'll be honest, like I get sad this time of the year or Iowa Trophy bucks. I'm like a stalker on there.
I stopped following it. Yeah,
because you start seeing deer you recognize, right? It's like, I'm not going to go sit there anymore because he's dead, and stuff like that. But, the survival rate, and that's the thing, like, I think the 3-year-olds is like something you expect. Like the average non-resident hunter and even like the average just guy that enjoys hunting, like he's probably not going to pass a big 3-year-old. And I recognize that. So a lot of them get wiped out. Once they make it to 4, I hope that they're smart enough typically that they can make it. And I think the survival rate is better at that point. But you also, there's a lot of them to get killed. I remember the one year I had a ton of shooters. It was like my 3rd year here. In fact, I had too many deer I was just kind of like, this is chaotic. Like I have too many big deer I'd be happy with. And I was jumping around a lot, and I finally was like, just focus on one. But that year it was just like annihilated. Like I had all these deer, and I was like, man, next year's going to be crazy. And like I think 2 made it that I was like really excited about. So I was like, okay,
So if you had to put a ballpark number, you think it's like 10%? So let's go to the 3-year-olds.
3-year-olds, it would just, if they're a big 3-year-old that I'm interested in, I would say probably 20-30% make it. It just depends.
It's not terrible. I mean,
I would say that's roughly about what we're.
Yeah, we're honestly not a lot better.
We're not a lot better.
Yeah,
and I think it depends on the neighbors that you have, And again, not knocking them, but if your neighbors are killing 2- and 3-year-old deer, then you're not going to
be tough.
Well, and that's the problem with an Iowa 3-year-old is
they're big
150, 60-inch deer. You know, I mean that's a lot of which you can't blame somebody, But we have that same rule that basically if we can get it, if ours is usually 3, but like at least through shotgun season, you get a deer that makes it to 4. Most of the time, if we know, like during shotgun season, he's good. Like he's learned enough.
He knows how to avoid the big push.
Yeah,
unless he gets caught, somewhere because of a doe. That would be the only way that probably.
Or like first day of the season, he didn't know it started yet.
I figured like Swoops would have gotten caught by a doe this year with how much he was moving around. I think he's still alive.
Yeah, he's done it. He's done it the last 2 years though. So.
Yeah, he understands something.
He figures it out. That's my point, is that he's moving all the time. I figured out of any of the deer, that deer's going to get shot just from being an idiot.
Or he could just be just lucky.
Yeah.
How do you get lucky 3 years in a row and being big?
I don't know.
I think he's figured something out, because there's enough people hunting around there that I'm sure that have a number on him that he's figured something out.
Yeah, it's crazy. I do think like there's a buck. So I named deer. You guys named deer too, and I do it more so I can talk.
We won't judge.
And sometimes I name after buddies. So like I have a buck named Hartley, which I actually think EHD got him this year. But he was the one I was telling you I have several sheds of earlier. But
you feel bad about shooting your buddies?
I don't actually. This deer, he's just a big old 8-pointer, and I'll probably never like. It's kind of bad. Like,
is your buddy chunky?
No. But this deer is big, like big body, but he's just an 8. But like,
you got to name him after your fat friend then.
Yeah, I need to do that. But he every year like he's on a piece of private where he'll it gets pushed hard, and they push it the same way year after year, and I always get him on his escape going out every year when they push it. Like, I'll get pictures on other cameras here, they do the push, and he's kicking out already. So, like, he's got it figured out. Like, I don't know what triggers him, but he knows when they're coming through that, because there's been different winds, because I was thinking, is it winds or what? But he knows that, hey, these guys in orange are going to start blasting away, and he's kicking out, you know.
Yeah.
He's made it every year. And then this year, I think EHD unfortunately got him. But, yeah,
now,
so.
One of the things you got to watch when you name deer after name human names.
Yeah.
So we did that once, and then I said I'll never do it again.
Yeah.
Easton and I are at Subway, and we're talking about the fact that he almost killed Ralph. And we're having a conversation, just normal, you know, and we don't have camouflage on. We change clothes, right? So we're in street clothes, and we're talking about shooting Ralph. And I look over, and this lady is looking at me like beside herself. I mean, just had this look on her face, and I realized she thinks we're talking about shooting somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and so I was like, okay, we're not doing human names anymore. We're going to give them something that it makes sense.
Yeah, I do human names. Then like there was $2 on public I was hunting, and back I don't drink anymore, but when I did drink, I like Bush Light, right? So the one was Bush, and then the other one was Bush Jr. because he looked just like him, and that was the joke that, hey, I like Bush, I like him, so whatever. That was just
I always find it funny when people give people crap for naming deer. I'm like, well, when you start, that is what you're telling me is you don't have very many deer to hunt.
Yeah.
Because when you have, okay, well, that 8-point or this 9-point, like, you got to have some way to be able to differentiate them. Otherwise, it's so difficult to explain them.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that 8-pointer with the kicker off his G2 and he's got a little nub down there in his back. Like, I'm not going to go through that.
Yeah.
My wife even knows the deer that, like, I'm hunting in the names. Like, she's even, because I talk about them so much, right? With your buddies and everything else, she hears it. So, yeah.
So let's go to the second part of that question.
Yes.
Are you seeing a big difference on what they do from year to year? Do people really throw a wrench in what they were doing?
Not typically. Typically, what I've found is, like, as long as the habitat isn't really changed, like on public, they'll do a lot of habitat improvements. Now, that's burnt me a little bit because there might have been a CRP patch with a ton of cedars in there, and they decide to go in there and mow it all off, and, like, there's no cover there. Well, then they'll move, right? Because they're just like, that's not the spot anymore. But as far as people, no. In fact, the one buck I killed 2 years ago, I called him Frank. Anyhow, and that I don't have a friend named Frank, but anyhow, that's another story. But
anymore,
yeah. But he was getting hunted hard, and there was like I don't know if the guy's an outfitter or what he is next to it, but he knew he was there and knew he was big. So like the pressure changed because that guy would see me parked along the road, and then he'd go ride his side by side along the fence all the time and like try to burn me on that. So, and then guess what? The deer wouldn't come that night because he would hear all that commotion. So I had to get smart, and I'd park like a mile and a half down the road and ride an e-bike in so he didn't see me. And then guess what? He didn't know I was hunting, and I killed him. So there is a human influence there as far as when they'll move, but I don't think he wasn't going to leave that area.
Right.
I mean, that's where he did the exact same thing the year before. Same thing. In fact, he was so consistent. I mean, it was unbelievable. He was the most consistent deer I've ever found as far as what he did. But if anyone else figured that out, like, he was dead. That's why I was like.
Like, what was he doing?
He
like
just was going
days
through
in a row or something.
Yeah,
or?
he would go. I made a mock scrape, and as a 3-year-old, he would hit it almost every day on a northwest wind. He would hit it. Like, if it was a northwest wind, you're almost guaranteed that he was bedded back in there. And then also he was going to hit that scrape going out to feed. Just what he was doing. And, like, there wasn't any food source probably for half an hour or so. So he was way back in kind of. But he just – that's what he did on a northwest wind. And I could have killed – I had cell cameras in there to watch him, but I would have killed him anyhow because I knew that on a northwest wind he was bedded back in there most of the time.
So did you shoot him when he was 3?
I shot him when he was 4. So I'll admit it, he was 4. I 100%. I sent his teeth off, and I guarantee he's 4. Like,
right.
But
was he the same in consistency?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
Now he showed up a touch later, which there's a lot of factors I think could have happened in there. But I hung a cell camera in there in September on that mock scrape that I made, and just let it sit. And I was like, he'll be in there in no time. And it wasn't even October yet, and there he was. And I was like, he's doing the same thing, and I'm going to shoot him this year. And back to, like, bumping a deer, that particular deer, I actually should have killed him the one night, but he came out too late, right? I ran out of shooting late, and I didn't know that he was coming out yet. So I climbed down the tree because I sit there till dark, and then I'm kind of like, all right, there's going to be more deer coming through, and, like, you're going to blow deer out typically. Like, I try to go in and out the same way, but guess what? Deer are moved now. They're not bedded. So I tried to just get out of there right away. But anyhow, so I got down to the base of the tree, and I could feel my phone vibrating. I was like, whatever. Well, it was cell cam notifications. He had hit my mock scrape like 90 yards away. I was kind of like, but I didn't check it. You know what I mean? And I was like, all right, I got to get moving. There's deer coming. So I get down, and, like, I hear something coming. So I just stopped. And he comes, like, 5 yards from me and just stands there. And I can see his silhouette, and I'm like, we're facing each other on the ground. I'm like, this sucks. I don't know what's going to happen here, you know?
Right.
That's karma for all the pictures you post teasing us. He's teasing you.
Yeah, he was teasing me, and I was just, like, looking at him, and, like, we stared. I don't know how long it was. It felt like an eternity, and finally he was just like, I'm over this, and took off. And, again, I shot him the next week. Like, he was doing the same pattern. Like, I was in his bubble. Now, I didn't shoot him out of that tree. Because of that, I was like, I'm going to do something a little different. So I actually adjusted and got closer to his bed, which was perfect. First night in, I killed him there, so it worked out. But, it was a fun deer to chase. It was kind of, like, chaotic. I should have killed him the night before I killed him, but I had my main water line in my house, like, start leaking. And I'm not a plumber, so, like, I started running back and forth town trying to buy stuff, and I was, like, so frustrated. And I told my wife, I was like, Frank's going to come through there tonight, and I should have killed him tonight, but I'm got to get this figured out. And cell camera goes off. He was there 15 minutes before legal shooting light was over, and I'm like, I knew this was happening, but it was a water leak. But it's all right. I killed him the next night, so it was fine.
So it's all
No
good.
big deal.
Yeah. But if not, I would have been mad because I would have been there that night. But whatever, it worked out. So
do you spend it, like, any time on the fields and stuff, or you just pretty much just staying in the timber or near bedding areas, stuff like that?
Yeah, I try to hunt close to their bed. And part of that is, you know, a lot of people say there's nocturnal deer. I really think there's not nocturnal deer, but I think they just move so little in the daylight once they reach a certain age, and they feel comfortable. So I'm trying to capitalize on that by getting close to them. And you're probably not going to do that on a field edge. And even on private, like I'm sure you guys see on some places where there isn't a ton of added extra pressure, that some of the bigger bucks just don't want to come to that field in the daylight. That's just not something they enjoy, unless it's late season and it's a battle of survival and they got to, right?
Yep.
So I don't focus on it. And honestly, you could go to any public piece and you're going to find a ladder stand and a camera somewhere on a scrape right there on the field edge. And, like, sometimes I'll put cameras there because I want to get cool photos, but really it's like that's not where I'm going to kill them at, and I recognize that. Yeah. So. Yeah,
I believe, you know, if you want to see deer, sit on a field edge. If you want to kill deer, sit in the timber.
Yeah.
Which is not always true, but I think in a lot of cases, that's where you're going to find them during the daylight.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of time you're not going to see a lot of deer where you're at hunting them in the timber. Like, I just want to see that deer. I don't care about seeing a lot of deer.
Yeah, it's not about quantity. It's about quality.
Yeah, and, like, some people, like family and friends that have hunted with me, they're like, oh, I'm not seeing much. It's like, do you want to kill a big one or you just want to see deer? Because I can put you in spots you're going to see deer, but then, yeah, and of course most of them will shoot
whatever.
Yeah, so it doesn't really matter. But I was
Right.
like, I want them to kill a bigger deer than probably. I mean, they want to, but it's like they're not going to sit there and be patient on it. So
Right.
it is what it is. But
Yeah.
Cool.
You guys have other questions?
One quick one. How many as far as targeting deer, how many do you think that you have as an option going into the year? Or how many do you feel comfortable?
this coming year,
I mean, just in general, like if you could say, hey, as long as I have 10 that I'd be happy with, I know I should be able to start narrowing it down to 1 or 2 of these. Or if I have 5 or 20, or how many do you think you start with?
it depends because, again, I don't score them. It's usually an age and then if I like them, right,
Yeah.
or their antlers. Like if their antlers are unique and I like them, like I like high and tight bucks. Granted, I feel like I shoot more Big Tens than anything, and I try to avoid that. But I like high and tight bucks. But it's not necessarily I don't have a number that I need to find. It's a matter of do I know that deer and do I know the information I need, and that's kind of and then like my season typically is like focused around that particular deer. The only time it wouldn't be is say that deer vanishes or does something odd, and then it's like, okay, I got to come up with a plan B or C or E, whatever.
So you could comfortably have one that you know have good enough information on and that you're happy with.
Yeah.
And go into the year.
Now I'll keep tabs on other deer just because, like this year, I'll be honest with you, going into this year, I was sweating because I had a really big deer on public that this has been the 3rd year I would have chased him, and I watched him all summer, and I was like, he blew up. He's a mainframe 12 and probably rated 190, huge deer, and I was kind of like, he's going down this year. Like, I've got enough information, good. And then the last photo I got of him was September 2nd, and I went elk hunting, and when I got back, I ran through all my cell cameras. I actually had my wife log into my apps and checking my photos for that deer to see, because I was kind of convinced he died EHD, and he never showed back up. And, like, I knew that deer well enough that he should have. Now, he could have got poached or something, but I'm sure he died at that time of the year there. But so yeah, I was sweating because
You'll probably find him.
I shed hunted in like the end of September looking for him.
Oh, okay.
And I couldn't find him. He's kind of in a tough spot to look. And I touched base with a couple of local DNR guys there, and like I was like, hey, I'll show you a picture of a deer, and this is where he was, and like so they like, well, if we find him or anything, I think honestly I'm not saying they'll give them to me, but they'll at least let me look at them. Yeah. And they're pretty decent. They told me about a spot where some non-resident said he found a big one, but he didn't do anything with it, and I went and looked, and it wasn't a big one, so I don't know. But I've looked a lot. I walked all the creeks and ditches and water holes and any spot where I thought he would have been laid up, and I didn't find him in September. I found a ton of other dead deer, but not him. So I don't know. And where he summered on this piece of public, he did spend quite a bit of time on the neighbors. Like, where the last photo I got of him, he was probably like 80 yards from the border, so there's a very good chance he's on the neighbors, and they probably found him,
Yeah.
But
When you're targeting some of these deer, how often do you think, or is it not, that you're having somebody else targeting the same deer?
It just depends. Like that really big deer, there was a whole slew of people, like just a whole slew of people, and like it was probably like the most stressful time I've ever had hunting, because like that was like my first year I ran cell cameras, and I'd get pictures of him and then get pictures of people, and like I had another guy cut my cell camera off. I hang a lot of them up high, and he cut it down and threw it in the creek, and like I forgot who that guy was. He was from Des Moines that was driving like 2.5 hours, but so I found out who he is, and he left the camera, so like it wasn't nothing to do, but like I contacted the landowner where he was accessing from, and they're like, no one has permission here, so he was trespassing to get into this public, because I also set up cell cameras to kind of watch what people were doing. Yeah.
What?
It's just hilarious to me that it's public ground and the dude is still trespassing to go to public.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like once they told me that no one was supposed to be on there, then I was like, I never leased the property, but can I lease it? Because I was like, I can keep him out of it, And then I thought, if that deer stays in that area, I might be able to access it better to kill him, which would have been better. But yeah, so I forget. I went on a tangent. I forget what the question was.
Like when you're picking out these deer, how often you have people that you think somebody else is targeting them in the same manner that you are, or if that's not, or somebody may be in the area, but they're not necessarily focused on him.
I'd say I really am convinced with cameras nowadays that especially on public, any big deer, everyone knows, and you guys see your neighbors know your big deer, right? They move enough that people know. So I'm convinced everyone knows about them. now if they're a serious hunter and targeting that deer, or they're just hunting, I think a lot of people are just hunting and hoping to run into that deer. I don't think a lot of them are going after it, other than the few that are like die hard, like we're focused on that buck. Then they're targeting that buck. But yeah, I don't like if I run like cell cameras in his core area and I'm getting people on camera. I don't like that because then it's like they're in the bubble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're in the spot. Now, if they're walking a couple hundred yards away, lollygagging, doing their own thing, like I don't care. You know, it's like he's still safe in my book. You know, but it just depends.
Well, because I feel like we give deer those same bubbles where we're like that. You could run into him here, but like the place that you're probably going to kill him is
right here,
there. Yeah. Yep.
Which is what I tell everyone. And like when shed hunting and stuff, or you need to know that area well enough and kind of know like, all right, that's the tree that I think I could kill him here, or this tree would work, and kind of have that in your mindset prior to every hunting season. Because if you know the history of what that deer is doing from year to year, go ahead and lay out your plan ahead of time. In fact, like that Frank deer, because I knew everything. Like I considered him dead long as no one else screwed it up. You know what I mean? When he made it as a 3-year-old, I was like, he's dead next year if he does the same thing. You know, and he did.
Yep.
So it just depends.
That's cool. But the I think we were not. I think we had to take a break there for a minute, and we were talking. What you're doing, Brook, you need to pat yourself on the back, dude, because it's a ton of hard work.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many, just the one thing that Easton was joking about it, knocking on doors, you know, and we get so many people that write in and say, you can't knock on doors anymore, anywhere. You know, where I live, there's absolutely no way you're getting permission. And I guarantee you in some places it's more difficult than others. But if you have a good plan, a right way to do it, the right way to approach people, and you do it enough, you're going to get a whole bunch of no's. But all you need is one yes.
Yeah.
And like I said, it may not be you're the only one that gets yes. You might be in there with a few others, but it still may be better than piece of public ground.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And your key point you said about hard work is like I can tell everyone what to do, but if they're not willing to put the effort and time into it, they're not going to kill big deer. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, like it consistently is what I'll say. Like you've got it, and you guys see, like there's a ton of work that goes into it. Just keeping tabs on deer from year to year, let alone trying to come up with a plan on killing them. So, but yeah, as far as door knocking, as a young kid, I did that back east because like in Pennsylvania, like it's one of the worst states as far as hunters per square mile. And if you want to get humbled real quick, go knock on some doors in Pennsylvania. But one summer, I was like a junior or senior in high school, and I wanted to hunt Maryland. Like that was like the state where the big deer were back east, and there is some really big deer there. So I went and like had a plan and got online, and this was before OnX and all that, and like looked at the plat maps and was trying to figure out different people that had property that looked sizable to hunt, and then I wrote them all down. I had 108. I had more than 108, but I knocked on 108 doors that summer trying to get permission, and I got permission on 3 places. So I got told a lot. No. And I was targeting, like, city deer back then is what I was trying to do because that's where a lot of the big ones. And, like, some people would be, like, terrible with you. They're like, we feed the deer their family. And I joked the one lady, I was like, I don't want to shoot your uncle. And they didn't think it was funny, you know. I was like, and I'm just a kid, you know, driving around in his truck down in city of, you know, Maryland. But, yeah, you like and like sometimes it got like a little shady, and like you kind of gotta like the beware dog signs. You kind of gotta read the situation, you know, before you go up there. And sometimes it's like
beware of bull.
Yeah.
Beware of naked man.
Yeah.
You ever had anybody open the door butt naked?
No, I did have a guy.
I did.
You did?
Yeah. Freaking, I was shed on, and then I had permission on all these other pieces. And I was looking for this deer that had like a specific deer, right? And because he had these cool kickers, and I was like, the sheds have to be on this piece because I walked everything else.
Yeah.
And so it was like, I mean, it was probably 6:45, 7 in the evening. So it's not like it was crazy late, you know. And I found this guy's place, and so I went up and just knocked on the door. Dude opens the door butt naked, like just totally butt naked. And then he's like, whoa, sorry, let me get pants and like close. I'm like, what were you thinking? Like, who were you expecting to open the door? That it was okay to totally butt naked for.
He was
And
waiting
his-
on a call or booty call or something.
Well, his wife was in there, so they may have been like into some odd stuff. But anyway, so then the dude like talks to me for like 30 minutes, right? And I'm like, I really didn't want to see that guy's pecker, but if I got permission on this property, it's probably worth it, you know? And then he talks to me that long and everything, and I was like, and he kind of owes me, because now I had to see this.
Yeah.
And then he still flipping tells me no.
Dang.
I was so pissed when I drove out of that driveway. I was like, that freaking dude. To waste my time like that, and then I go through that, and I thought for sure it was a lock. No.
Yeah, and sometimes you got to call it. Like, I've been trapped where, like, it's a no, and they're still just wanting to talk to you. And it's like, you don't want to be disrespectful because, like, sometimes I'll go back from year to year because then they get to know you. And that's actually worked good for me. It's like, they said no, I'll take notes on it. Like, they said no, so-and-so hunts, whatever. And then I'll go visit them next year. Hey, is so-and-so still hunt here? And bring that up. And then it's like the one property I just got permission this year. I didn't even hunt it but one day to try to shoot a doe. But the lady's told me no the last 3 years, and she just gave me permission this year. And she's like, yeah, I think you're fine. You can go in there.
Must be a 200-inch deer there. Because he's just hunting does.
Well, yeah. I'd already shot my late muzzler buck, and I was like, there's usually some big – she lets us shed hunt, me and my buddy, and, like, she'll let us shed hunt. But, like, when we asked about hunting, it was no because her brother-in-law shotgun hunts. And – apparently now all of a sudden it's okay. So,
but that's what it takes. Like, I agree. Like, the days of probably being able to just go up and randomly knock on a door they're not over because you can still get 3 yeses out of 108.
Yeah.
However, if you want that to be maybe 10 or 15 yeses where you're tripling, quadrupling your percentage, you got to find other ways to build a relationship like that.
Yeah.
To be able to get them to do that, and that's the work you got to put in if you want to be able to get those yeses.
Absolutely, and then take care of those people too. So,
Absolutely.
This is a secret of mine, not a safe word, but a secret that I do is I do a personalized Christmas card every year and either put a gift card or something there. Some of them that I know like deer meat, I'll take them a stick of blowing or stuff. Some of them I don't. I know they don't like deer meat, so I'm not going to offer that, right? So I'll give them a $100 gift card or whatever, and that goes a long way.
Take notes, folks.
Yeah, that goes a long way. And, like, I did that this year on a piece of property I got permission on, and the lady called me right away and was, like, almost in tears, so thankful that I did that. And then she sent me a thank you letter back and, like, hand-wrote everything. And I'm like, I told my wife, I was like, I'm in. Like, like, the first year I got permission on that property, and, like, I'm in now. Like, I've got she's going to let me hunt until she dies. Like, I feel that, And I enjoy.
That's just because then she knows, hey, I can trust this dude. He's not just, going to come out here and just shoot everything up and tear everything up. You've built a relationship.
That's the key word is relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if people don't understand that, I mean, because I can tell you, I mean, going back to when I was knocking on doors when I was your guys' age, it was different then.
Yeah.
And mine was, I would go to the craziest looking places, all the junk cars and everything all over. And because all of a sudden you find out that this dude owns everything.
Yeah.
And everyone else was terrified to go there because Cujo laid on the porch, it looked like he was going to eat your leg off or something like that. He was the most friendly dog around. But that was kind of my thing. I would find those places and I was like, and I got more turkey permission and stuff like that. And the other one is it can be a very small chunk of ground. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a huge chunk of ground. We've had permission on some stuff as small as 10 acres. We just met someone the other day that killed a big deer on 1 acre. 1 acre of ground.
They just got to go through there.
Yep.
Yeah. No, you're a good point, and you made me remind me. So when I moved to Cedar Rapids, I knocked on a door. I had gotten permission on a big chunk of ground. It was kind of weird. It was a dentist owned it, and like they were like, "Yeah, you can hunt." And then they like had a map printed out and like showed me the map and everything. I was like, "Wow, this is cool." But the one buck that was there that I was kind of trying to keep tabs on lived further south, and I would see him from the road further south. So I knocked on that door, and like the lady ran. I don't know if she ran for governor or what. She's kind of a popular lady, and she's like, "We don't let anyone hunt, but if you do some work, we'll let you." I'm like, yeah, what do you want me to do? So I went and cut firewood and split firewood with her husband like one Saturday, like all day. And looking back, it was kind of dumb, but I was like eager just to do it. And they're like, you can only shoot does and you can hunt in shotgun season. And I was like, I have no desire like to do either, but I kind of thought I was going to get an avenue to go in there and bow hunt. And they're
Right.
like, we only want you to shoot does in shotgun season. So I bought a doe tag and sat there and didn't shoot any. But it was like, the thought process is like sometimes you got to do stuff you don't want to do. And that's all right. How bad do you want to kill one? You know,
Right.
It just comes down to it.
Putting in the work.
I'd have been like, "Are you Republican or Democrat?"
Yeah.
And then,
No votes.
Yeah, she had a big.
or I'd have been like, "You've been letting a Republican hunt this whole time."
yeah, she had a billboard of her advertisement when she ran in their like big machine shed, and that's how I asked. Like, I didn't know who she was. You know what I mean? I just knocked on the door and I asked her, and she's like, "Yeah, I ran. I might run again." And I don't think she ever had a chance, but she was trying.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
Well, cool. Well, Brooke, thanks again for joining us. Before we get out here, we always do this wacky fact thing. So,
Yeah.
Warren,
Which I have, and I have one question to give you a minute to think about while I go through my wacky facts. And so the question is if you could pick out one thing that you're doing different than everybody else, figure out what that one thing is. If you had to tell people this is one thing I do that plays into the most of my success different than probably what most people are doing. So if you need a minute, I'll give you a minute and go through my wacky fact.
All right.
Okay. Hopefully we don't distract you too much. Okay, so this one goes off of a previous wacky fact.
Oh, boy.
Let's go.
Yeah. Harry Styles,
Oh.
which Easton and Nick will know, and maybe Brooke.
I have no clue.
He's a singer or an actor or something. He's somebody famous, but he's a pretty boy. He's not really our type of thing.
He's a little
However,
bent at the wrist.
Okay.
Which we have nothing against those people, but he's just describing him. Harry
Dad knows
Styles has 4 nipples.
Oh, that's a record. Oh, wait, is it a record?
I don't know, but we said, what was it, 1 in 18?
I've only met one with
No.
3.
No, remember the statistic
Yes.
was that 1 in 18 people had
3 nipples.
3 nipples.
This guy
Yeah.
has 4.
Well, and now I'm wondering if maybe they're wrong and it's not, and it's 1 in 18 people have multiple or more than 2 nipples, and you got guys like Harry Styles that are taking them all up.
Taking them all.
You know what I'm saying?
I'll take
So
one
he's
from
got-
you and from you.
That's a wacky fact.
Yeah.
So
Something
he
I
has-
didn't need to know.
I'm
He has
concerned
4
why you were
nipples.
looking him up.
I'm not. It's in the list.
Oh.
And then there was another pretty good one here. Let me find it.
Wow. He's
Where
about
was
to
it?
shut our whole entire rig down.
Where was it?
Don't step on that ding dong.
What are you looking for?
This other wacky fact. I thought it was right.
You're supposed to be prepared.
Yep.
I already found it, but it's on the same list.
So these aren't even your wacky facts. You didn't even go find them. You just look up a list.
Well, it's wacky facts, and then I'm going through it.
Okay. Well,
Well,
you're taking
I
too
think-
long.
yeah.
I'll
So.
have to hold it till next week because I don't know where it is now.
So today's wacky fact was some dude named Harry Styles that has a bent wrist, which we don't have anything against, has 4 nipples. Sorry, we've let you down.
This is what that one dude on YouTube was talking about. Some of your guys' tangents
They're
are crazy, but 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
You know what the biggest dinosaur turd that there's ever been measured? Take a guess. What do you think it would be?
10 foot.
Oh, that's what we
See?
were hoping too.
What was it, 13 inches?
Yeah, it's the size of a 2-liter pop bottle.
What?
Is that not the most
From a
disappointing thing
T-Rex.
you've ever heard?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what we thought. We're pretty sure it had to have been a baby T-Rex turd, but
Yeah. I think that's a wrong wacky fact. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, so did you put a little thought into it?
I did. And honestly, I think it comes down to the thing that I do different than a lot of people is just pure work ethic towards it. And the reason why I say that is I'm not a cocky person and I don't want to take that way, but like I've been very like Western hunts I just got into last year, right? I went on a do-it-yourself bear hunt. Like I put in a ton of work prior to it, and that work paid off. Like, and I was successful. And I think that relates to whitetail hunting too. It's all what you put into it is what you get out. And you know, I wish I could say that there was some top secret thing that I was doing that no one else was doing, but I really don't think. I mean, the whitetail industry is saturated, right? I think there's a lot of different topics. I mean, people talk, you know, thermal hubs and stuff like that, and there's a ton of topics that a bunch of guys are using. So I don't want to say that. I think it just comes down to one, the data I capture and keep record on from year to year, and then just hard work and retaining that information and utilizing it to the best. And the fact that I'm spreading myself wide to try to find big deer. Like, if there's not a big deer on that particular piece of public or private, like I'm not going to spend any time there that fall. Like that is a waste of time for me to just sit there and hunt and hope that one's going to show up, right? So a lot of times that one thing is like, I think guys sometimes pigeonhole themselves, like they just hunt where they're comfortable, and then they just hope that maybe they'll catch up with a big one. But it's like, if there's not a big one there, you're not killing one, right? You might get lucky and stuff, but that's the chance I'm not willing to take. I want to go find one. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of guys kind of get themselves stuck, and then guess what? Another season goes by and they didn't kill one that they wanted or one that they had hoped or the level they wanted because they were just happy with where they were at, where they're comfortable. Yep. So I think getting out of your comfort zone and putting hard work and effort to it's probably one thing that I do different. It's probably to a level that most people can't appreciate unless they follow me around year round, you know?
Yep.
And that's not I don't want to mean that in a cocky way at all.
Not at all.
Nope.
And then, like you said, because I believe that goes with anyone that you meet that is successful. Your comment earlier was exactly right, and that is consistently.
Yeah.
I don't care whether you live in Pennsylvania and you're killing 110-inch deer every year or 90-inch deer or you're killing an elk every year. That guy who's consistent every single year, he's not doing something magical. He's putting in the work.
Yeah.
He's just flat as busting his butt.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. Like I've had, of course, when you start killing big deer, you hear a ton of negative stuff about someone, right? And everyone thinks they have an opinion and whatever. So I've heard people say, well, he lives in Iowa, that's why he kills big deer. And it's like, I recognize that, but I killed big deer in Pennsylvania also. I killed big deer in Maryland before I moved here. Like, there's a ton of effort I put into it prior to. Like, I didn't just start having success in Iowa. You know what I mean? Like, It was continued, and that's the thing I tell people is, like, especially in public, it's anyone's fair game. You can come out there and hunt the same deer I am. So, like, if you do it, great, I'll shake your hand. Like, I'm not going to be upset. Like, anyone can hunt them deer. So,
well, it is Iowa, but at the same time, you got to have a decent idea of what you're doing. There's plenty of people that live in Iowa and they're not killing anything, or they'll kill a big deer here and there kind of thing, or a good buck and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's just, since it's Iowa, you're going to walk around every tree and there's a 180 standing there.
Yeah, and like, this sounds kind of rude, but like, if you're not killing big deer in your home state, you're probably not going to move to Iowa and kill big deer in Iowa.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just my perspective. Like, you know that area, you've lived there, right? So if you're not doing it there, chances are you're probably not going to.
And big deer in relative to that size area. In that area,
right? Yeah. Yep. And yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks again, Brook. We appreciate you, man. This has been super delightful. I hope that you guys have enjoyed listening to I feel like we've covered a lot of stuff here and some very insightful information. We were disappointed on our wacky fact, but other than that,
I wasn't. I thought that was pretty good. I've never heard of
jealous
4.
He doesn't have 4 nipples.
Yeah, I've only heard of 3.
I think 2 more and you'd be a boar.
Those are teats.
Okay.
How many do pigs have? 8 or something?
We're going to get out of here.
They have teats.
So this is the Raised Hunting Podcast signing off. We're going to get out of here so you can't hear these idiots talk about their nipples.
Not our nipples, Harry Styles' nipples. I have 2, not 4, just for clarification if anybody was curious. I don't know how many Dad has.
Joey has 3.
Yeah, Joe, one of our fans, Joey, said that he had 3.
I have 2 worthless nipples. Just there's no point in having them. I don't understand why I got them, but anyhow,
mine are beneficial in the ways I like them.
That'll be the comment that Nick will use to post this. Was I have 2 worthless nipples.
Just gonna keep winking till we're done. There we go. Goodbye.